All right, so we are putting together a quote for the exterior. We can walk down here. Let's pause for a second. Okay, so we're putting together a quote for the exterior of this house. Before I get into scope of work, let's talk about a few things that need to happen prior to our arrival that the client needs to have done. There's quite a few spots on the white trim where there's dry rot. So any dry rot on the house, I'm not going to call it out specifically, but they're going to have somebody go through and inspect and find all the dry rot spots and have those fixed and repaired before we get here. We'll take over any sort of prep and paint that happens post replacement of the wood. The bottom line is, or point is we are not doing any sort of wood replacement. It's not part of our scope. All right, so step one for us is to get the house clean. We'll do a gentle wash. We will use a fungicide to get rid of any mildew on the home. Very important step. We do use a moisture meter. In other words, we want to let the house dry. Typically do the cleanings like a Wednesday, Thursday, and then start the job the following Monday. It's kind of a standard normal process. If there's any question or concern about moisture content holds in any of the substrates, we will use a moisture meter. It's generally not a problem because we're painting in the warm summer months, so not an issue. So get it clean, let it dry, and then we will return. We will begin by masking off any adjacent surface to prevent drips, spills, splatters, and overspray. So windows, the vinyl around the windows, the roof, your patios, walkways, all this kind of stuff, fences, this kind of stuff gets covered and protected with either tape, paper, plastic, or drop cloths. All right. Caulking. We will be inspecting for caulking failures. This is Hardy Plank, but it's the first generation Hardy Plank, meaning that the field butt seams are caulked. Okay, so any of them that are failed will be recalking, including any cracks that we find. So I do want to set proper expectations that no matter what caulking we use or how we do it, these are gonna reappear again, especially on this southern exposure where the sun's blasting it. These things move around too much. People try to face nail them. The problem with face nailing is because the board's moving, it cracks. So just need to know that there's no warranty on caulk, because I'm gonna use some awesome stuff, but it's just gonna happen again. So just be aware of that. Don't get too worried. You do have a moisture barrier back behind there that as long as nobody ever takes a razor knife and scores it and cuts too deep, that moisture barrier is going to protect you back there. So caulking is part of this project on the butt field seams. We'll also inspect all the corners, both inside and outside corners. Any caulking failures, there's none here to show you, but if there is anything failing, we'll repair those. Any place where two boards come together, if there's a failure, we'll recaulk. Okay. Let's see. In terms of prep, not going to be a lot of peeling paint on this house because it's Hardy Plank. But if you do see some stuff like that one, we'll go ahead and scrape that down. We will use a masonry primer on any of the cement fiberboard. Very important to deal with the pH. Otherwise, you get pH burn and your paint will actually wear really funny in those spots. So we'll use the proper primer for the right substrate. If we find peeling paint on any of the wood surfaces, that'll get scraped. It'll get sanded as needed, and then it'll be spot primed with a primer that's meant specifically for the raw wood. Okay. That's more or less our prep work. At that point, we are ready to spray. We will be straight spraying all of the body as well as all the soffit, which is the underside of the roof. So all that will get sprayed. We'll be doing 2 full coats. I don't have one today with me, but we do use this device. It's called a mill gauge or a paint film thickness gauge, and it looks like a little credit card. And what we're doing with this thing is we are using it to ensure we're putting the proper amount of paint on the substrate. When you spray, you have a lot of options for tip sizes, pump pressure. Then you have the human element, how far away they're holding that gun, how much they're overlapping strokes, how fast they're moving it. Far too many variables to be able to control film thickness if you're not measuring. So on a periodic basis, more or less once we get it dialed in, we'll dip that little guy in and it'll show out on the nubs that we're hitting right around 4 wet mills. It's very important that you don't over apply. If you put too much paint on in one coat, and this is where a lot of companies will make mistakes, is they think you're doing you a favor or they're trying to get away with something by doing one coat. The problem you create is if you start putting on 6, 7, 8 mils in one coat, it's not so thick that it will start running, but on an exterior, it's very important because we're outside and we have temperatures. It'll skin over too quickly on the outer layer of that thickness, and it's still curing underneath. And with spray, it's really easy to over apply paint. People just pull the trigger until they see the color change. The problem you've created is you've trapped moisture in there in the drying process, and that moisture will permeate and get through the skinned over coating. The problem is it does it by popping and creating little pinholes. Those little pinholes don't close up. They are now open moisture holes and basically entry points for moisture and mildew spores to go back behind the coating. And that will definitely void a warranty on a paint coating, so from the manufacturer, and it will cause your paint to prematurely fade. And in a worst case scenario, you could have a delamination problem. So very important that somebody understands to be using a mill gauge and they're actually following the specifications. It's no different than having not changing the oil in your car. They're not going to give you your warranty if you're not changing the motor oil. So same thing with the paint, got to do it right, otherwise no warranty. All right, so once the body is all sprayed out, then we would be coming back on any of the trim surfaces to hand apply 2 coats. And so we're going to do similar colors. Colors will be called out and noted in the contract. Product that we're going to be planning to use, we're going to be using a product called Cover Coat XL. My recommendation would be the satin finish for the body and semi-gloss for the trim. It's got a higher sheen to it. They perform and wear better, less fade. It's a nice look. That's my preference. You do have some choices there. We're not locked into stone there. That doesn't change the price. So, but we will need to note color and sheen on the contract before we purchase any paint. Okay. Color combinations are going to stay the same. So if it's currently called out as white trim now, so gutters, fascia, columns, door frames, window frames. If it's white now, it'll be white again. In other words, trim. If it's currently in body color, it'll be body color again. Okay. Doors are all included as well. So front door, we pull off all the hardware. The thing gets scuff sanded, wiped down with denatured alcohol. We're going to do a heavier sand here to get rid of this ridge from the old door lock. By the way, if you're going to change your door lock, you've got to change it before we get here. If you don't, this is the kind of thing you end up with is you go to change your lock after we've painted it, and then all of a sudden you can't get the same lock as you had before, and then you have a different footprint, and you end up with something like this. So very important to change your hardware before we get here. We will take whatever hardware we find off, prep and paint your door, and we will only reinstall the hardware we find. We will not install a new door handle for the first time ever out of a package. So please, if you're changing hardware, have it installed before we get here. We'll pull it off, prep, paint, put it back together when we're done. The door is going to be painted with a special paint. It's an enamel hard finish called Renaissance, and so that's what's going to be used on the door. It's higher. It'll deal more so with scratches and dings and the abuse that front doors get. Okay, so that's what it will be used on the door. Your color of choice. Okay. By the way, I would recommend. It's up to you. I am a big fan of painting the trim around a front door all the same as the front door itself. You can do whatever you want. I would either go that way. I would paint the door and all of the trim, including this side light, all the same if it was mine. Now, if you wanted to paint, if you want the door to be a different color than the trim, my advice would be to paint only the front door, the part that opens, its own isolated color. And I would make this side light white, so your trim color. You can do it however you want. Let us know what you're thinking. So either, again, all of it's the accent, okay, door color, or the second option that I would choose would be to make this little section in here white, or the same as your trim, okay? But we can do it this way too if that's what you want. All right, let's go this way. The rest of this is pretty much all the same scope that I just talked about. I just want to show my crew what's going on here. So here's the left-hand side. It looks like the last guys didn't do what we do. They painted this. That's a bummer. Typically you don't want to paint these because, as you can see, paint doesn't stick to them. So let us know what you want to do here. We can paint this again. Just know this is going to happen again. You could potentially pull this off and buy a new one, and it's stainless steel, and then we wouldn't paint it. So I'm going to plan to paint it though, since somebody already painted it. Just know it's probably going to start to fail again. So all right, nothing out of the ordinary here. I do want to set expectations that these areas like this are going to fade again because of all the heat. The stuff we use does do really well. I don't know how old this is, but just want to set expectations. Dark colors, high heat, fade. The rear door here is include. Okay. All right, we do have a little bit of a tricky spot here. Your neighbor's fence is too close to your house in order to get a good ladder angle to get to the very top here. So we are going to need to put a ladder on your neighbor's side. Your bid is contingent on your neighbor letting us in. We'll, of course, communicate with you and your neighbor, too, if you give us their phone number, to be able to let them know that we're coming. We just need to be able to put a ladder over there, and it's only just to reach this very high peak. As soon as we drop down to about there, we're going to be moving ladders back onto this side to reach this little section here. So just realize, if your neighbor will not give us access over here, the only solution we would have is to either A, don't even paint this area up here, which I'm sure that's not going to work for you, or B, pay several thousand, could even be as much as 5,000, to have a scaffold company put scaffold straight up here that we could climb up to get to there. There is no other real way to get to this stuff. I guess we could get a boom truck out here. Actually, a boom truck would probably be cheaper and be in the road and shoot that out here, but that's going to be a couple thousand anyways. So just realize the bid is based on us getting access. We're not going to be in the yard very long. They just need to know about it, okay? There is one other prep thing over here. They did put on a new roof. There are several sections, I don't even know if this is going to show up, of raw. There's 4 sections up here of raw wood. It just looks dark. It's the underside of the roof that got replaced. We need to prime that first with our wood primer before we paint the body. So that is part of our scope. All right, actually, let's get this shut. Okay, almost done here. Boxes, wires, conduits. This all gets painted. If you don't want this painted, let us know. I can tell that this has been replaced because these typically always get painted. So just like this box here, we'll mask off the meter. This gets painted. Well, let's mask this off though. Okay. And we're back to the front. Garage doors include. Everything else is included. Right now, you do not have an accent color up there, or at least it doesn't appear as though. I'm going to assume that we have one body color that will go on the shingles and all of the horizontal siding and the garage doors and all the soffits, the underside of the roof. And then the second color will be the white trim, and then the third color will be just your doors. All right, at job completion, we will do our own final inspection, and we will approach you guys once it's all been blue taped and marked. Once we've found anything that we want to correct, and we will let you know that it is ready for inspection, and we'll have you guys go through and mark anything that you don't like. The goal there is to have no loose ends or touch-ups at the end of the day, and we want to get to that point of 100% completion before, and this is very important, before we leave the site with equipment and crew, and of course before you guys are asked to make that final payment. That is it. Thank you guys for watching.